Our first person to go for their qualified speaker in District 12 this year, in the year 2021, and he didn't put this in introduction, but I wanted to mention that he is fairly new to our district, but he's been a Toastmaster for quite a while, and he is a qualified speaker in District 100. So that's something to be proud of, and we're proud that he's here going for his qualified speaker. He's a member. He's met all the guidelines that you have to meet to become a qualified speaker. And so Dr. Michael Alexander is a DTM. He has been employed as an expert witness for 25 years. He is the author of the best-selling book, Survive and Thrive on the Witness Stand. This week, he will share the techniques he has used to win $1.4 billion for his clients. Dr. Michael Anderson, a 30-year Toastmaster and 30-year Toastmaster veteran, and is seeking to become District 12's qualified speaker. Michael Alexander.
Oh, excuse me just a second here. As always happens, the technology has its own ideas of what it should be doing. And I apologize for that. Give me a second to reset, if you will. I made every effort to make certain that the technology would not be my enemy. And of course, the technology is once again my enemy. So let me start with this. I love to tell people that I am an expert witness. It's something I'm very proud of. But it confuses people because they say to themselves, I wonder what that's like. What does it mean to be an expert witness? I wonder if I could be an expert witness. Is it like television? What are the demands? So let me tell you, first and foremost, it's not what you're used to seeing. Courtroom is theater. It's a search for the truth, absolutely. It is something which is very important. But it's not simply a matter of searching for the truth and people say the truth and the judges somehow magically know. No. They have to make a decision based upon what it is they see. And that means they have to guess who has the most credibility. Now, if you're speaking in a normal situation, it's the same thing. You have to establish your credibility. Facts are a wonderful, magical idea. The reality is credibility is what makes them work in people's head. So when you go into a courtroom, start off by saying, how am I dressed? Do I present myself credibly? I dress myself properly. I speak in tones which give me credibility. I talk about things like my book, my doctoral dissertation, the places I've testified. But just plain dressing is important. I was in one case where the witness was a young, pretty, curly-haired blonde dressed nicely. She didn't have gravitas, and it brought down the way that the judge looked at her. You'll see in custody cases where women will show up wearing short skirts, low-cut tops, trying to get custody. They look attractive, but do they look like mothers? That's the question that they have to answer and the judge has to answer. So always remember that the courtroom is theater. You must present things. You must present yourself calmly, smoothly, and give them a feeling that you know what it is you're doing, no matter what seems to be going on elsewise. Now, the next thing to remember is that you and your lawyer are a team. A lot of people go into the courtroom thinking, it's me. I will tell the truth. It's about me. It's not the case. Lawyers often have the opposite approach. They figure it's all about them. It's not. It's a team. Young people who go into the courtroom and say, this is the truth, and they yell and they scream and they know that they're right, usually don't look that good. Let me tell you about the first time I was on the witness stand. Before I went, the lawyers that I was working with prepped me, and they put me in a room and they asked me some tough questions. And we went back and forth, and they tried to make me sweat. They worked very, very hard at it. And when we finished after 20 minutes, I stood tall and proud because I had not given an inch. And they said, Michael, that was very impressive. You knew exactly what you were talking about. You anticipated our questions. You were strong. You were confident. And you commanded the stage. Don't ever do that again. Because what I hadn't done is I hadn't been likable. I hadn't been someone that anyone wanted to believe. But more importantly, I hadn't given my lawyer a chance to get in what he wanted. Because ultimately, it's his story. Ultimately, it's what he manages to put into his briefs to summarize what's been said. So I needed a different approach. Now I talk with a lawyer and I say, so what do you need from me? This is what I can say. This is what I will say. This is what I won't say. If you need me to say that, then we may have a problem. And there have been at least one case where the lawyer has said, I need you to say this. And I said, I can't. That's not the truth. He needs to know that in advance. So always work with your lawyer. Work towards where he wants to go. And if you do that, you're going to be much more credible. Remember that when you go forward. Now, you all know the oath, right? The truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Look at this slide. I say the truth and nothing but the truth. What happened to the whole truth? Realistically, they're not going to let you tell the whole truth. The opposing lawyer doesn't want you to be able to say anything you want to say. So he'll object that his response is irrelevant, hearsay, not responsive to the question. Don't try to tell the whole truth, but make sure what you say is the truth, absolute truth, and nothing else. Not only will they catch you, probably because the opposing lawyer's done his research, but in addition, they will come back later. One of the cases I was involved with, the witness had been testifying for 35 years. And sure enough, the opposing lawyer looked at something he'd said in his first case and said, didn't you say 35 years ago, and he read it, and it contradicted what he said in that case. Fortunately for Luther, the name of my colleague, Luther was smart enough to say, well, I'd like to feel I learned something in 35 years. But always be honest. And if you're like me, and you're going to go on the witness stand in the future, then realize, like Luther discovered, you're going to have to deal with whatever you say today, next year, or a year from now, or more years from now. And for those of you who aren't on the witness stand, I'm going to tell you the same thing. People will remember what you say, and they'll bring it back and throw it in your face. So always remember to be careful about what you say and tell the truth. You can say, I've learned something, but if they catch you in a lie, you're always caught in that lie. People do not remember isolated facts. That's not how the human brain works. People remember the way the facts hang together. And for that reason, you want to tell a story. You want to show how whatever it is you've experienced or whatever it is you're planning whatever it is you are, fits together. Know your story. Know it as a story. Know how to make each fact work together. When you do that, the facts will hang together, and the jury or judge will want you to be correct. They'll want that story to work. And if one fact is a little weak, well, it fits in with the other facts around it, and they'll like that, and they'll move on that basis. Know your story. Know it well. Know it by heart. And then teach your story. Don't just tell it. Don't assume people know what you want them to know. Don't assume they'll put it together right. Teach them. Get them invested. If the judge wants that story to be true because he loves it, it feels right to him, he's going to take that story and he's going to make judgments based on that. So make him get invested by teaching him, making it fit, not just isolated fact. I'm an expert, right? I can throw out words like heteroscedasticity, linear regression, autoregressive correction. Great words. But they're words. If I show them a graph, when we did a trial against El Paso Natural Gas for monopoly behavior, we drew a graph which showed the behavior and the prices of natural gas as El Paso manipulated the system. The little changes in El Paso's demand for gas were drawn in red. Little tiny drops in red on the graph. And the judge, trying to understand it, said, so these little drops of blood are El Paso's purchases? As soon as he used the word little drops of blood, we knew we'd won the case. But the last thing you have to do is you have to defend your story, because the opposing lawyer will try to pick it apart. A lot of people are scared to go on the witness stand for a very simple reason. They're afraid that they're going to be asked questions they don't know the answer to. Me, for 2 weeks before I go on the stand, I ask myself every single question I can come up with. I look for every single flaw in my story, and I have a response. So when I go to the witness stand, am I nervous? No, because I know whatever they ask, I've already figured out the response. And that makes it possible for me to defend the story and maintain my credibility. When you go on the stand, do the same thing. Defend your story. Think about what could go wrong. And don't get nervous. Spend the time to be able to defend it and give the right answer. Keep calm. No matter what happens, keep calm. They're going to try to mess you up. That way you get nervous and you say things you don't want to say. You know, it's better to say nothing than to say something you don't want to say. That said, you can't just tell the truth. You've got to stick with the story. Remember, stick with the story. But keep calm. Nothing is to be gained by yelling from the witness stand, but Your Honor, he's a liar. Your Honor, this is the truth. It makes you look like you're out of control. Do we trust people who are out of control? If you watch a person in a Toastmasters meeting or any political thing and they've lost control, do you believe them? Or do you wonder why they've lost control? So when you're on the witness stand, keep calm. No matter what happens, keep your story with a smooth, credible pacing, and that will help you be believed. And that will help you win your case, your custody battle, your criminal case. It doesn't matter. That's where the secret goes. There's a tendency for us to get embarrassed by silences. And all of you know that, right? Anybody here who's married? Have a debate with your wife, and then watch what happens when she suddenly looks at you and just stares at you, and stares at you, and stares at you. You're going to come up with something to say because you're worried about the silence. It's the same thing in the courtroom, and the opposing lawyers will do it all the time. When you're nervous and it's silent and they're staring at you, you're going to have a tendency to say something wrong. Don't succumb. Sit back, wait patiently, and then the opposing lawyer will have a problem. Now, I'm going to tell a story here. A little outside my slide, forgive me. The first time I was on the witness stand, I was new, and I went up against a lawyer with 40 years of experience. This was the day of his retirement. He had a reputation for eating witnesses, especially young witnesses, for lunch. We were having a debate about whether or not the best way to determine the effect of weather on the demand for gas to heat homes was the high temperature for the day and the low temperature for the day, or a series of 8 observations every 3 hours apart. He looked at me and he said, "I'd like you to do a simple average for me. Do you have a calculator?" Grabbed the calculator. He said 0 and 100. Easy question. I played along. I typed in both numbers. I said, "Let me double check my work." 50.0. I took the time to do that for a reason. Then he said, "I'd like you to take the average of 8 numbers." Now he gave me 8 numbers, the highest of which was 100, the lowest of which was 0. And he said, "Could you give me the average of that?" And I smiled, typed everything in and said, "Would you like the arithmetic average or the geometric average?" He panicked. Lawyers never ask questions they don't know the answers to. And he had no idea what a geometric average was. Probably none of you do either. You'd have to be a real math wonk to bother, a nerd of all types. But it kept him off guard. And he ran around the room trying to find someone who could tell him what question he'd just asked. He finally found the answer. He said, the arithmetic average will be fine. And I gave it to him, but I broke his stride. And when I broke his stride, I was suddenly in command. I did a similar thing, to be honest with you, with my divorce. I was on the witness stand, and during the break, my lawyer said to me, "What is it you're doing?" I said, "Have you noticed that her lawyer has a tendency to make mistakes when she's mad?" "Yeah." I said, "I'm ticking her off on purpose." He said, "It's working wonderfully. Keep it up." Of course, I had to make sure that I didn't do it in a way that offended the judge, because the judge is the one who makes the decisions. Remember when you're on the witness stand. Remember in life everywhere, people, no matter who you're talking to, negotiating with, or anything else, that most arguments are legitimate differences of opinion between men of goodwill. They see things differently. Your opposition isn't evil. And even if they are, calling them liars doesn't build your credibility. Always assume, they see things from a different angle. They have a different theory. The judge will understand he's got to judge between different people. And if you stay calm and you explain why you're right, not because he's evil, but because my theory makes more sense, go back to your story. That is going to win you points. The jury is the same way. And remember who your audience is. It's the judge and the jury. Is it your opposing lawyer? Absolutely not. He's paid to oppose you. You're never going to convince him of anything. Don't try. Don't argue with him. Explain to the judge and the jury why he's wrong. In fact, ignore him for the most part. They doesn't have to like you. The opposing lawyers don't. My wife's lawyer didn't like me. She was mad at me. But the judge saw what I was doing, and he understood what I was explaining. When you are on a stage, people, if you're not in the jury, if you're not on the witness stand, it's the same rule as you've had there, right? Who are you trying to convince? Not the guy you're debating with, but the audience. Remember who they are. The last piece of advice is acceptance. You're not necessarily going to win every case. The law may be written wrong. The judge may hear the other guy's story, it's a little bit better. And to be honest with you, I have been in cases where the judge is biased. I've been in cases where I could tell as soon as the judge was assigned if I'd won or lost a case. Accept it, don't fight, look good when you come to fight another day, or fight it outside in the appeal or anything else. Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever have to deal with being on the witness stand, and many of you will, remember these tips. And if you need help, feel free to contact me. There's my contact information. You can survive and thrive on the witness stand. Mr. Toastmaster.